of the biggest talking points for 2025 is, of course, tariffs. Now, you guys know we don't shy away from politics or policies on this channel. We give it to you straight. So today we're talking about, should you buy your motorcycle now, and are prices going to explode? Logan, this is a nuanced and complicated topic. There's a lot to get into today.
Very nuanced, very complicated. And I'm probably going to lean on you pretty heavily for this episode. Despite what you may believe, they don't talk a ton about global economic policies in film school. So I'm probably going to rely on your expertise a little bit more.
And you'd be surprised to know, as many of you in the audience may, I have a bachelor's of science in economics.
There you go.
I know you may not believe it. You're like, this bald cap wearing asshole, but no, I actually am a little credentialed to talk about this. So one of the things that people who are watching the news are keeping up with is that this situation is constantly fluid, constantly changing. So we're recording this as of mid-August in 2025. Maybe we'll come back on this episode 2 years from now and be like, man, those are the golden days. You know, you could get a bike for cheap because things are ramping up in price. So I wanted to talk about KTM first, because they're starting to put a 10% import duty surcharge on their models made in India, which is a huge percentage of their portfolio, all the beginner Dukes and all that. So it says here that they're going to add a $700 surcharge to their models.
Yeah, so we've got now more than in recent weeks or months, even actually have like hard data of seeing these increases show up on manufacturer websites. We've got some insider info from some different dealerships that talking about the policies that are being put on them to implement these new charges. But why don't you take us from the top a little bit just in terms of the tariffs in general? What does a reciprocal tariff mean for motorcycles?
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows that back in April, President Trump put out this giant blanket tariff on the whole world, started ramping up the trade war with China. It ended up cooling down. So as of today, we're sitting somewhere around a 25% mark, but China's looking like a 34% because back in April, they introduced all that stuff. And basically what everyone was doing is just like waiting and seeing. You know, the stock market reacted very aggressively when the tariffs were introduced. They were basically like, you're going to nuke the economy. What are you doing? Then he backed off. There's that meme now of like Taco, Trump always chickens out. And it's like back and forth. And then like it was delayed until August. And now it's even confusing to us because we saw that it's like, it was like, awaiting final reply in November, but announced in August, effective in August. Nobody really knows what's happening. So anyways, all the motorcycle manufacturers were all doing that wait and see. They were kind of eating the costs for a while. They're like, it's okay, we're not going to raise prices because we don't know if it's going to stick. Well, now I think they're getting worried that it is going to stick and they got to do something. But it's interesting because in, for example, the case of KTM, you know, it's a 10% import duty surcharge, but that's not covering the full tariff amount yet. So they're still kind of like hedging their bets. But they're getting to the point where they're like, we gotta, you know, pass this off somewhere.
Yeah, get ahead of it a little bit.
You know, small lesson to you guys, if you're following the news, you will end up paying the tariff. It is a bit of a myth that the other countries are paying the tariffs or the companies are paying the tariffs. Ultimately, the consumer will pay the tariff because the companies cannot afford to keep running at a loss like this. And we've actually seen Honda Motor Corp actually said that they posted a 50% drop in profits for Q1 of 2025 as of August 6th. So it shows that those impacts will happen slowly and, you know, it'll see if it sticks. So that's where we're kind of at.
Sure. So yeah, that's kind of where what's been interesting over the last week is, all this speculation and rumors, like we're starting to actually finally see some ramifications, some like real world impact. Because for the last couple months, there was a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, but now it's like, you know, we've seen some evidence, we've done some sleuthing online and it seems like it's actually taking hold. But before we get too deep in it, I wanted to ask, so I've been like outsourcing a lot of my script writing to China. They've got really cheap, really cheap per word rates. So I'm curious, like, how is that going to affect my bottom line?
You're arbitraging your bottom line right there. I like it. I've actually seen art. So this is a total side note, but I've seen, articles of guys who have they've picked up 3 or 4 remote tech jobs and they just juggle around their calendars. And I think that's so sick. Yeah. It's like you pick up $150K, $200K job here and there. There was one guy making $800K a year working 4 different jobs. Yes. So if you are doing that with China, good on you, because the quality is awesome. I like it. I appreciate it.
I mean, if it's there's a reason they charge penny a word or whatever, because it doesn't quite work.
Because they're probably just using ChatGPT, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So sorry for derailing a little bit.
The one thing I wanted to talk about, because in theory, what President Trump is trying to do with these tariffs is bring back U.S. manufacturing and investment. Right. Not to get too into the economics of it, but blanket tariffs typically don't work in that way. It just serves to like cool trading in general. Usually you'd use like a laser targeted tariff for a specific industry. And so you might say, so all these tariffs, it's going to bolster Harley Davidson, right? The American company. What? Right. It turns out that global supply chains are complicated, right. And Harley actually sources a lot of its raw input materials to make their motorcycles from overseas.
Right.
So even Harley Davidson will be affected by the tariffs that are in theory supposed to help U.S. manufacturing, because we're a highly interconnected global economy. If you do one thing to one part of it, the whole thing starts to change, right? So even Harley Davidson was showing here that with the looming 25% tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other inputs, they actually withdrew their full year 2025 financial guidance due to uncertainty. So one of the craziest examples we found is that in Europe, they're facing a 56% retaliatory tariffs. They said that a road glide could cost $124,000 in Denmark.
Yeah, I was looking into that too, and people are buying 883 Sportsters for like 28,000 Denmark bucks, whatever the currency
crazy.
is over there. Yeah, absolutely crazy. It's like, brother, I'll sell you mine for $5.
You make off like a bandit.
Yeah, I know.
And this isn't even just for actual motorcycles, right? Like we've seen that even retailers, your Revzillas, your online e-commerce giants, those sort of things, they're increasing prices on gear and parts because they can't float it, because the way those businesses work is, it varies, but typically what they do is they hold inventory here in the U.S., source all that material, and then sell it to you, right?
Yeah.
Sort of a chain. So they're the intermediary. If they're buying from overseas, typically China, typically Europe, they're going to incur those costs as soon as they cross into the country, right? So it won't just affect motorcycles, it'll affect all the stuff you buy for your bikes too.
Even the Farkles.
Even Farkles.
The
so
finest
now,
Italian carbon fiber is going to now cost twice as much.
It brings us to what dealers specifically are doing. You found a dealer online that is basically using this marketing message of like, beat the tariffs, right?
Yeah.
Act now, go fast. And we had a bit of a disagreement of like, should you reactionarily buy a motorcycle, like knee-jerk buy a bike now to avoid the tariffs? What do you think?
So I thought about it a little bit more in like the 5 minutes between we had that conversation and then running the cameras. And my line of thinking was, for instance, we've seen these surcharges be applied to like Yamaha motorcycles. On their website, a $19,000 R1 has a $1,250 import surcharge fee or whatever. My line of thinking is, if you can't afford a $19,000 R1 with a $1,200 surcharge, then you probably can't afford it at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a great point, right? Like if $1,200 on a $19,000 purchase is going to make or break it to you, you probably couldn't afford it in general. That's my thinking. Because I mean, I don't espouse my personal finance choices on this channel, but usually like I don't agree with taking out loans to buy toys. You got to live below your means. Like, to me, it's like a motorcycle should be just like a drop in the bucket for like your overall life, right? So yeah, like if $1,200 is going to make or break it, I implore you, don't buy that bike. That's not a good idea. But yeah, like we're seeing dealerships now kind of being like, get it now before it's gone. And honestly, to me, I think they want to clear out their inventory before they're stuck with a bunch of bikes they can't sell, because they're going to have to put on the bill of sale this supply chain surcharge or whatever they're going to call it. Because I think from like sort of a political, but also like a branding perspective, putting tariffs on your thing doesn't look good.
Right.
Even though we have seen some websites, literally, I think Amazon for a while, they were like literally tagging in like, they said like tariff plus 20% or whatever. And I think Big Boss Trump actually talked to Bezos like, cut that shit, don't put that on the website. You don't put that on the website. Not good optics, bro. And he's like, they were trying to just be transparent. But this is going to have downline effects to the entire market. The used market specifically I wanted to talk about.
But before we get to the used market, talking about this sort of buy now thing and the effect of affordability on motorcycles, what we're seeing, at least for now, is a lot of these surcharges are being implemented on the smaller displacement, more budget friendly bikes,
Yes.
which kind of sucks because people like them because they're inexpensive and they're budget friendly. And an extra $1,000 on a $7,000 motorcycle or $6,000 motorcycle, it stings a little bit more than tacked onto a $20,000 bike.
Totally.
So
Totally.
and I think it's twofold. I think it's maybe, I mean, a lot of those bikes, for instance, KTM's smaller bikes are made in India. India has like the 25% tariff right now, I think. And so obviously where it's manufactured, they have to cover more of that. But also I'm sure those bikes make less profit, you know, compared to some of the bigger bikes.
Definitely,
And so they're like,
definitely.
yeah, if we're going to be have to pay these tariffs across our entire sort of fleet, we can't be losing money on the little bikes. Like we
Yeah.
definitely got to get as much as we can for them. So I think that kind of sucks, and that will have a little bit more of an impact than maybe, you know, an extra $1,000 on a $20,000 flagship bike.
Yeah, that's a really fair point, that the consumer who's going to buy an entry-level bike is probably way more sensitive to price change than the
Right.
guy buying a $20,000 super bike, you know?
Yeah, because it's same on Kawasaki's website. Like the only, as of now, recording this August 14th, I think, on Kawasaki's website, the only models that show this supply chain surcharge, or however it's said, is like the KLX models,
Yeah.
which is strange, but. And it's like $350 or something on a $5,500 bike. But yeah, it seems they're kind of aiming at these smaller bikes, being like,
Yeah.
we got to make sure we make money on these.
And part of me is like, you know, I feel for the dealers because they just simply have to tack that on there because it's coming from the supply, it's coming
Yeah.
from the manufacturer level. But I think a lot of people will look at their bill of sale and be like, oh, freaking dealership is, you know, screwing me out of some extra money. It's like, they don't have a choice, man.
Yeah.
Like what are they supposed to do?
And because there already is a lot of distrust in dealerships. Obviously,
Totally.
the whole dealership joke and everything, you know, it exists for a reason. And I think post-COVID, people are even more suspicious of dealer pricing and dealer markups and everything. And I think now it's sort of unfortunate timing as things have sort of regulated, both in terms of dealer markups not being so prevalent and supply being back to where it needs to be, and the used market as a result has kind of normalized, unless you're selling R6s, that's still crazy. But
Yeah.
and so now with all these tariffs, it's like we risk going back to those kind of COVID era crazy price fluctuations on both new and used bikes.
Yeah. I think that's going to happen. I think it's going to make the used market look really wonky. And I'll use the example I gave you before we started recording. Like, imagine a world, you know, we're thinking about R9 versus R6 currently because that's the bike we have as a giveaway right now. And like R6 used pricing is crazy. So like an R9 right now, it's a 12.5 motorcycle MSRP at the door, close to 15. Perhaps with tariffs and all that, it ends up being 17 out the door, right? Well, a lot of people might say, "Damn, I'm gonna look on the used market. That's too much money." Well, more demand on the used market, prices go up. And yeah, like if a new bike is now pushing 15, 16, 17 grand out the door for a middleweight, yeah, like all that's going to do is increase the pricing for used bikes. The price would not
Right.
go down. More people are looking at them. More people are trying to buy them. So then all of a sudden, everyone, you know what? Put your call options on R6s, baby, because I think they're just going to keep going up in price, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like all the listings we used to joke at of someone who bought a bike, barely rode it for 6 months, maybe a year, and they're trying to sell it over MSRP because they're like, save on fees. Like it'll be $500 less than like the out the door price. And they're
Yeah.
like, I put a slip on it. So my CF Moto is now worth $8,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we used to laugh at those listings. Maybe those are going to be like the good deals, you know, where
Maybe,
they're
yeah.
like, if you bought a CF Moto 6 months ago, 4 months ago for XYZ amount, someone looking for that bike a year from now, and it costs 25% more MSRP or these surcharges and everything, maybe that overpriced save on fees listing is actually a good deal.
All of a sudden
you
it
know?
looks good.
Yeah.
And that even compounds to like what we're seeing, you know, for KTM, not even bringing their Chinese Duke 790 anymore
Right.
to the US quietly, just like not offering it, still available in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And then Are we going to see, CF Moto 750 SRS just never make it here because they're like, we can't sell it because of the tariff. So it might just be like a European only model.
But we just made that video, bro. The CF Moto video.
We just made that one and the other one. We have like collectively like 500K views on CF Moto content in the last like week.
I'm talking about it's gonna be the next big thing, and then a year from now, and like they pulled all the big models, and people are like, what the hell, game?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen specifically with that because China obviously is the big talking point in terms of the reciprocal tariffs and everything else. I just don't think it'll stick.
Yeah.
I think even beyond this administration, not to get back into politics too much, but tariffs are related to politics because there's one guy doing it, right? And I just don't think that beyond the 4 years he's in office, it's going to stick, because nobody likes this. It's just making business unpredictable. It's making it difficult. It's increasing cost to consumers. You don't win in a trade war. Nobody wins, really.
Yeah.
And like we're getting fewer bikes here. Well, that was already happening for a couple different reasons, but now it's like we may get fewer and fewer bikes in America in general. But I will say, I think I'd rather get fewer bikes and pay a reasonable price than pay like 40 grand for an R1, like we've seen like in India or... there was a commenter on the R9 versus V2S video that said in Australia, those two bikes are separated by $1,000 based on their value-added tax, based on their import duties. So it's very market specific. And I know a lot of people will say, you guys have it so good in America. The bikes are so cheap. And we're kind of scratching our heads like, they seem kind of expensive to us. But yeah, $40,000 R1,
crazy talk. And I think it's worth discussing too, the compare and contrast a little bit, like this current wave of tariffs compared to like the sort of infamous Reagan era tariffs that were meant to save Harley Davidson. Because in a lot of ways, that situation, it pushed Japanese companies to make more powerful, better, smaller bikes and start doing some manufacturing in America. And then also it did allow the space for Harley Davidson to get better. Like in those 4 years or whatever, it was a night and day difference between like AMF era Harley Davidson and then what they become, with the Evo Sportster and all this stuff came in of that era. And then it was Harley themselves that were like, okay, Reagan, we don't want this. It's the Japanese are getting too good as a result of these tariffs.
So I think that story tells me two things. It tells me one, that laser focused tariffs can be a good idea. Like this was a very specific tariff on a very specific industry for a very specific country. I don't necessarily agree with Harley Davidson crying to the government asking for help, but that's what they did. And the second thing it tells me is that the countries on the receiving end of the tariff will find a way around them in whatever capacity. Like Japan in the 80s was so powerful. Like they could just do anything, like they just did everything, right? And what we may see, we already seen this a little bit, is like, say, for example, they say, okay, 34% tariffs coming from bikes from China. Maybe those bike makers in China will be like, oh, we'll just route them to Vietnam first and then ship them out, right? To avoid the tariffs. Every time you set up red tape like this, they find a way around them. Like you said, Honda started building bikes here. They made smaller turbo bikes. I mean, they will find a way around them. That's why I'm like, it's not going to stick.
Because, something that could be interesting, say these tariffs say kind of targeted towards China. They got the 34 to 35% tariff or whatever. CF Moto, in just typical CF Moto, like never let them know your next move kind of attitude, starts building bikes, in like Thailand or Vietnam or something, and then selling those ones to America, and then they become even maybe not better because they're already pretty good, but maybe more trustworthy to the suspicious or skeptical consumer. And maybe that's like the next unintended consequence in like the CF Moto legacy.
I don't know. I'd say doubt CF Moto at your own peril, because they've been proven that they'll do anything to stay ahead. So I think that this is something you should definitely keep your eye on. But I would say that if you're thinking about buying a bike to avoid tariffs, don't stretch yourself thin. Life is long. As we said, if $1,200 is going to make or break it to you on a $20,000 bike, maybe you got to wait a little bit to then purchase that bike. I wouldn't make any big life decisions based on tariffs. That's personally not how I would live.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this, Logan?
Just stay positive, stay hopeful. Everything's going to be okay. No, I mean, I think that's a good ending point.
Yeah.
On the decisions. I don't know. Yeah, should
Yeah.
they buy a bike right now? I don't know.
I don't know. It's like I was saying before the recording. I'm like, maybe I'll just like buy a lot of the giveaway bikes in bulk end of year.
Right. And we already had a bunch in bulk. Like when
That was inadvertent.
moved out here. Yeah.
That was inadvertent earlier this year where I had to buy like 4 bikes in advance. And now honestly, I'm kind of thinking, but I'm running a business. It's a little different, but. I'm like, should I just like buy all the giveaway bikes for next year and just like keep them in a shed somewhere, you know? Because I did that this year and it worked out okay.
Yeah.
Like the CF Moto we have has been kicking around for months,
and
I still haven't ridden it, which is crazy. But yeah, we will see. We will see. Well, hopefully, folks, you don't end up paying too much more for your motorcycle. And for those of you holding on to your R6s, like I said, maybe they'll just keep skyrocketing in value. Who the heck knows? So we'll keep an eye on it for today. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. Leave us a comment down below on what you think about the tariff situation, if you've seen it impact your local market. And we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. See you later.